Okay, let's be real, there literally isn't anything else worth talking about in the world of entertainment than Endgame right now, but thankfully Avengers 4 is every bit the epic, mammoth final installment in the first arc of the MCU as we hoped it would be. It's one hell of a ride, and the vast majority of everyone's predictions were completely wrong, and it handles its convoluted shenanigans with extreme grace. And yet, for a movie that mostly holds together, where even its most baffling interdimensional shenanigans are explainable, there are a bevy of questions fans will likely have to theorise on for the rest of time. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, back from celebrating the fact that now Fat Thor exists, there's a perfect cosplay for me, to bring you the 10 biggest unanswered questions we still have after Avengers Endgame. Oh, and spoilers, obviously. Number 10. Doesn't Thanos destroying the stones break everything? For as much as we've been trying to make sense of Endgame's convoluted time travel awesomeness, there's one plot point that doesn't quite line up with everything else. It's to do with Thanos' reveal from the very beginning. When the Avengers finally arrive at the Mad Titan's hut, he states that the stones have been destroyed, but this directly contradicts the Ancient One's comments to Bruce Banner later in the film. Because outside the fact we've been told repeatedly in other movies that the stones are what created reality as we know it, the Ancient One reiterates that they need to be placed in their respective timelines for time itself to continue flowing. Quote, "The Infinity Stones create what you experience as the flow of time." Note the word create. So by that logic, the Infinity Stones need to exist for a reality to continue functioning. Only Thanos outright destroyed the stones at the very beginning, and that, if the Ancient One is correct, would have broken the universe right there and then. I mean, it makes sense from a story perspective that he destroyed the stones, but it does raise a few more questions as to exactly how they work and connect to the fabric of reality that the film kind of skips over a little bit. To be fair though, it's already 3 hours long, sometimes you just gotta look around, see that the universe hasn't imploded, and get along with the plot. Number 9. How did Cap undo the Soul Stone curse? Speaking of Cap, one of the biggest unanswered questions we have comes from Captain America jetting through time at the end of the movie, re-establishing reality and letting the stones resume their natural course. Only the Soul Stone is kept on Vormir, and the only way to get it, through a prophesized line delivered by the Red Skull, is to pay tribute, a sacrifice. Lose that which you love, a soul for a soul. But how do you return the Soul Stone to Vormir? How did Cap set this up? Putting aside the fact that his greatest nemesis is now a space ghost haunting the place he's returning to, is there even a way to undo this ancient space magic? Also, it would have been so cool to see his meeting face to face with the Red Skull again. Another unanswered question we'll probably never get is how that particular interaction went down. Number 8. How did Cap put back any of the other stones except the Time Stone? It's not just the Soul Stone that has problems with its return. Consider the following. The Reality Stone was extracted from Jane by Rocket Raccoon using a thing. Cap then has to travel back to Asgard, sneak back into the throne room's side chambers, and re-inject Jane with space magic without her knowing? The Power Stone was housed inside a grey chamber made of ancient space nonsense that gets smashed to pieces when the stone is removed. How does Cap make a new container so Quill can steal it like he was going to before War Machine and Nebula took it? The Space Stone has another case of needing to put the stone inside something, as the Space Stone was formerly the Tesseract, and even back in the 1970s where it was stolen from, S.H.I.E.L.D/Hydra were keeping it in the same cuboid case it was first housed in. How did Cap turn the stone back into the Tesseract? And then there's the whole problem of getting the Mind Stone back into Loki's scepter. This is starting to sound a bit nitpicky, and obviously it isn't essential to the plot of the movie, but the film does kind of treat it like returning the stones is the easy part, and it would be so cool to see actually how Cap did all that awesome stuff. Number 7. When/where/why is Gamora? Gamora's final scene in Endgame is kicking Peter Quill in the bollocks. A pretty fitting exchange between the two, but there's also the possibility that after Tony snapped away Thanos' legions, she was dusted too. If not, she just left, I guess. The only reference to her in the rest of the film is Peter firing up a piece of tracking software as the screen reads searching with her face on the monitor? Obviously, this is definitely a question we are intended to have, as it's probably going to be a big part of Guardians 3, and the filmmakers left the question dangling to build up hype for the upcoming installment. Number 6. Why can't Black Widow be brought back like Gamora was? I have to imagine that when Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus finally got even a first draft of this thing down, it became an exhausting case of tying up every possible loose end. One that is potentially strange though is the death of Black Widow. She commits suicide on Vormir so Hawkeye can retrieve the Soul Stone in the exact same fashion as when Gamora died in Infinity War. She lands in the exact same pose and they even play the same music. When it comes time for Bruce to wear Stark's glove and click his fingers to restore everybody, he notes that he tried to revive or bring back Widow, but it just couldn't happen. But why though? Seriously, why? Yes, she was sacrificed for the stone, so that means she can't come back directly per se, but we've literally seen Gamora reappear by travelling back to an earlier point in time and wrenching her back into the future. So couldn't they just pull her back through the quantum realm? If the combination of Pym particles and Stark's time machine can do everything else we've seen in the movie, they surely could go back, rescue Widow from the past, and bring her into the future post-Thanos. Number 5. How did Thanos come to the future without any equipment? This one is a bit picky, but it looks like a genuine plot hole if you want to get technical. 3 things are needed for Endgame time travel: Stark and Banner's combined machine, a quantum realm suit made of nanotech, and a wrist-mounted GPS-style device to locate you in physical space and time. All of these things are shown working as expected or get described as such across the movie, and yet, when it comes time for Nebula to bring Thanos and his armies forward from 2014 to 2019, she just does it. No suits, no Pym particles, no nothing. 2014 Thanos isn't remotely equipped for time travel, but the scene plays out regardless, with evil Nebula pressing a number of buttons on a keypad, seemingly locking his location in, only to bring the entire Sanctuary 2 ship through the wormhole and up into space. The process is so bizarrely silent, in fact, that the other Avengers don't even realize Thanos and co are up in the skies until after Bruce's snap, when all the missiles hit the base. It was necessary for the final battle to happen, and I'm damn glad that it did, but yeah, technically, by the rules of the movie it would seem, it was totally impossible. Number 4, haven't half of Spidey's classmates graduated? A very simple detail to miss in the grand scheme of things is that after all is said and done, we leave our Avengers in 2023, 5 years after the snap. It's a major change to the vast majority of other Marvel movies, which take place in the year they were released, but regardless, we have a weirder plot point to tie up: the fact that half of Spidey's overall cast have just aged 5 years. Clearly you can't see it in their faces, the actors haven't aged 5 years despite their characters doing so, and outside of that, there's the fact that everyone at Midtown High who didn't get snapped would have graduated by now. Maybe this will be explained in Spider-Man Far From Home as literally all the main cast members being snapped at once and then being put back. But another possibility is that director John Watts will just ignore it and move on with the next story. Number 3, is Loki the only remaining separate timeline? Okay, so here's where we have to get into the 2 prevailing theories that explain all of Endgame's time travel. Not just the multiple universes, but the fact that Cap could then be sat on our bench in the same reality as our Bucky and Falcon. Point 1 for these remaining theories is Loki. Upon stealing the Tesseract in 2012's Battle of New York, after the modern-day Avengers give him an opening during the heist, this breaks the established timeline for the first time in the movie. Loki teleports out the scene and isn't mentioned again, as the movie continues with Stark and Cap journeying back to the 1970s to grab an earlier version of the Space Stone / Tesseract. However, even if Cap does successfully return all the stones to the main timeline, assuming going back to the 70s where it was taken from, what happens to Loki? Did the earlier mission in the movie get invalidated / wiped out? If we go down the multiverse interpretation, is Loki's divergent timeline the only one that doesn't get reset by Cap's final actions? Could this maybe be where Loki's TV show is gonna come from? Number 2, did Bucky know about Cap's plans to live in the past? Another minor yet totally worthwhile talking point is Cap's final interactions with Bucky and Falcon. Personally, I don't exactly think Cap just died on that bench at the close of the film, and I reckon they probably went out for a few drinks or something, but as far as the film goes, the young Cap's last words to Bucky are a callback to their first film together. An inverse of the "don't do anything stupid until I get back, how can I, you're taking all the stupid with you" line. These are essentially Bucky's final words to his best friends. The final shot Bucky gets is a nod of approval towards Falcon accepting the shield from old Cap. But it begs the question, is this casual level of acceptance because that reference line is Bucky subtly saying goodbye to Cap beforehand? The more you look at it, the more it kind of looks like Bucky might have guessed Cap wasn't coming back. But we may never know. Number 1. How did Cap get back on that bench? There are two main theories as to exactly how Cap wound up on the bench at the end, and it has to do with the whole way time travel works. Number 1, the multiverse theory. Cap travels back to the 1940s, returns the last Infinity Stone back where it belongs, and begins living a life with Peggy. Because he's altering Peggy's past, this fractures time and creates a separate reality where the pair live out their lives together, maybe saving Bucky in the process and preventing the deaths of Howard and Maria Stark. Cap being on the bench comes from him using a remaining vial of Pym particles to beam back onto the bench at the exact time he knew he was supposed to return in the first place. It's one possibility. The second one is the one timeline theory, which seems to be the one the film is pushing. This revolves around Cap setting all the stones back in place across the main MCU timeline, eventually settling into his old life with Peggy in the background of all the other movies. So for most of his life, there were two Captain Americas on Earth, one in the ice and another far away from the spotlights, living his best life. This would line up with the Agent Carter TV show, who always left Peggy's husband as a mystery, as it could have been Cap trying to hide his identity all along. Then he just ages naturally and knows when to show up on the bench at the end. However, this second explanation does raise the question, did the time-traveling Cap just sit back and let all the bad stuff that happened throughout the MCU happen without his involvement? He could have stopped the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D., he could have saved thousands of lives in Sokovia. It just doesn't seem that much in Steve Rogers' nature to just sit back and let all that evil happen. But, you know, maybe he did. The guy's earned a break, after all. Those are the two main theories bouncing around online, and both are cool enough, but at least for now, we only have pure speculation as to which theory is the correct one at the end of Endgame.